Hey guys, it's Mountain Walk, and today we're going to be talking a little bit about the big pre-modern monthly tournament thingies that they have all the time. And this one is for May. This one also has 100 people, just like the last couple ones, so that's pretty sweet. So yeah, let's get started. Alright, first off we got Stasis, and this is pretty much exactly what you would expect. It's just Stasis. Nothing too weird here. Pretty stock list. Um, Typically, well, Howling Mine is sometimes played, sometimes not played. I mean, uh, obviously Howling Mine can help you keep up Stasis, but obviously it is symmetrical. It can benefit your opponent, so um, I'm not a huge fan of it, but it's not the most unreasonable card to play. But yeah, obviously giving your opponents cards is typically not super great. Even it helps you more, it can help them break out of the stasis in general. So I'm not a big fan of that, but everything else here, very stock. You know, got the mana short in the sideboard. Um, I guess mana short just wouldn't be just for control decks. It would certainly be pretty good against anything because you're basically every deck you want to get all their mana tapped down so they, can't do anything. So that's an interesting card. But yeah, here you go. So that's Stasis. All right, and again, another pretty stock list. We got Tide Control. So it's basically Blue-White Control with the Parallax Tide, Seal of Cleansing combo. Got a nice Enlightened Tutor sideboard. Got, good stuff to tutor for main deck, all your different artifacts and enchantments, so that's pretty great. Um, of course, you guys know me, huge fan of Enlightened Tutor sideboard planes. I think they're pretty great, pretty awesome, and a lot of great cards here. Great sideboard stuff. I even like the sideboard Absorb. I'm a big fan of Absorb. It's quite good against just as a solid card against aggressive decks. It's very good there. And like worst comes to worst, like if you need to board out dead cards, like having another hard counter isn't the worst, even if it's not the most impactful. So pretty sweet. Okay, and now we basically have Grow, or at least pretty similar to Grow. Obviously, no tropical islands here, but we got um, the Lord of Atlantis Gaia's Skyfolk combo, right? Gaia's Skyfolk being an elf merfolk, kind of wonky. Again, seen playing the original Grow decks, of course, along with Dryad and Looter and stuff. So that's pretty sweet. And then, of course, islands. You have My Coast, Undiscovered Paradise, which are Undiscovered Paradise itself, of course, is very good with Winter Orb. Typical stuff, free spells, Gush, foil and Daze for counter magic, Portent and Sleight of Hand for card draw, Opt and Peek for card draw too. Lots of ways to just cycle through your deck, make a big Quirion Dryad, so that's pretty cool. And again, typical cards you're going to see in the sideboard: Chill, Naturalize, Beb, Crypt, Gilded Drake, Stifle, so on and so forth. So yeah, definitely a pretty typical list. Pretty good looking list too. All right, and now we just have elves, and this looks like a very stock elf list. Nothing weird here. Um, just looking through it, making sure. I mean, obviously 3 Tangle Wire instead of 4. That's a little unusual. I love Tangle Wire, especially in this deck when you can crap out so many permanents. I think you're definitely a very good deck that can break the symmetry, take advantage of Tangle Wire, and when Tangle Wire is really good, I mean, man, it's great. So, but obviously this person did not feel like they needed the 4th one for whatever reason. So yeah, there you go. But yeah, maybe. Well, I get maybe is it the tribal force mage? Is that like the random one of here? That's like the dude that you unmorph and it pumps you guys. I don't know. I don't think that's stock, but yeah, I guess the guess that's an interesting inclusion, interesting elf. But yeah, typical elves list otherwise. All right, and of course now we have like the solution, but again like the some of the more um, well, this guy, I think, Brian Cowell, was the one that actually pioneered the Future Sight tech and the more proactive um, nature. So just like removal stuff you could play off the top, not like things like counter magic or whatever, which can get stuck with a Future Sight in play. So really trying to maximize the power of Future Sight, which makes sense because obviously like untapping with this card is pretty damn good, pretty insane. Yeah, Future Sight's very, very powerful here. Definitely a great card to want to build around, but obviously you don't need it, right? You still have just a bunch of good disruption, um, and a bunch of like good creatures slash disruptive creatures and so on. So yeah, pretty sweet stuff here. Definitely a big fan of Future Sight in this list. Okay, now we got some kind of wonky stuff. Um, I mean, for the most part, this is a typical list that you would see of any Phyrexian Devourer deck, but the Deep Analysis, I believe, is a little unusual. It is a pretty cool card. You can get it off Intuition, so you can get, obviously, Deep Analysis is very good against other control decks when you're just trying to, you know, get a critical mass of cards to push through your combo. Deep Analysis is very good there. Also, just giving you cards to, actually get off, just always have value off your intuition is certainly a good thing. And of course, um, you know, getting other artifacts and stuff for Welder and things like that. So yeah, intuition, great. Deep Analysis makes intuition even better, which is really great. So yeah, and of course, I love the art on Deep Analysis. Definitely a classic, very, very good. Uh, yeah, but other than that, this is a typical sort of devourer list. I don't know why I can't say that word. Okay, and now we have Growthhog. So yep, this one's just Growthhog. Got your Moxes, got your multicolor mana base, your Gushes and Dazes, your removal, counter magic, Ray of Revelation. Uh, I guess Shadow Mage is a little unusual. I don't typically these decks don't play Shadow Mage, but yeah, definitely a good card in the control matchups or just in general. If you can get it going for a couple turns, it's a little clunky versus the like any of the aggressive decks. It's a little clunky there, but it is very good if you can protect it for a turn and do a little bit of damage, draw some extra cards. Very, very powerful. I definitely like the idea of like turn one, like Mage off of Mox Diamond, turn two, Shadow Mage. Afterwards, it's like, oh boy, 1-2 punch of invitational cards. That's pretty sweet. Uh, yeah, on the sideboard, typical stuff you're going to see. I guess Ray of Revelation is a little unusual, but certainly with the uptick of, enchantment-based decks, so like the Parfait list that I've been seeing play, other Oath lists, obviously the any deck that wants to play Humility. This deck obviously not a big fan of Humility, so Ray of Revelation very good in those particular instances. So certainly an interesting metagame call, and obviously it's card advantage too, right? If you can flash it back, which is pretty sweet. Yeah, everything else though looks pretty normal. Got extra duress in the sideboard for combo Armageddon against anything that's vulnerable to Armageddon. So think of something like the Rock. A lot of good stuff here. A lot of good stuff here. All right, and now we have the Pyro Oath deck. This is very cool. Definitely, I think this is the same exact list as the ones we've been looking at the last couple times. I think this is the same one. Yeah, looks all about the same. Maybe the Shard Phoenix is new in the sideboard, but yeah, this deck is sweet. I'm a big fan of Pyrostatic Pillar and Sulfuric Vortex. Those cards are very cool. Big fan of those. And of course, I love Black Vice. I'll put Black Vice in anything. I love that card. So sweet. Yeah, nothing too weird here though. Yeah, this is a pretty typical Pyro Oath build. Definitely a very cool Oath variation. Big fan. Okay, so now we have a chance encounter deck. I mean, sort of. Wow. Okay, so it's like a blue-red control deck. You know, you got your counter magic, your bolts and fire ice, right? Of course, you got earthquake, right? Again, a big fan of that in the counter burn style decks. Very good. Stuff like portent, keg, disc, that kind of stuff. Then you have frenetic Efreet. Again, definitely a little unusual until you look at chance encounter. In some respects, I think. Oh, okay. I wonder. I wonder if you can actually. Depends on how the card's worded. I wonder if you can actually just spam the zero ability on the frenetic Efreet and then like win with chance encounter that way. Like, because the only thing you need to do, or does the ability fizzle if like it's bare if it dies or is phased? I'd actually have to read that, but I'm assuming the way this works is that you play the chance encounter when you have the frenetic Efreet in play, uh, activate the ability like 100 times, 1,000 times, a million times or something, and then you would, you know, win 10 of those flips, and then you'd just literally win the game with chance encounter. I mean, I'm assuming that's how this works. Sometimes, you know, people think things work a certain way, and then they play it, and they're like, oh shoot, it actually doesn't work that way. So hopefully it's not the latter with this, but frenetic Efreet plus chance encounter is very cool. If it works, I'm not sure. Again, I'd have to look at the actual Oracle text on this, because there could be erratas and all sorts of other weird things. Um, but yeah, again, the sideboard though is pretty good. We got another, you know, something hard to kill like Morphling. I guess if you just need another threat that's very difficult to kill. Obviously, these kind of decks you can really get into late game situations where like you're countering and killing like every single thing, and then Morphling is like actually okay in those sort of situations where you have a bunch of mana up and things like that. And then of course like you know annuls and hydroblast and so on, another disc, you know things like that that are you know good, just good sideboard cards, right, for control decks. I like the misdirection. That's certainly a sweet card. Again, lots of targeted removal, things like that. Big fan of misdirection. I like the forbid. That's pretty sweet. And big fan of disc. You know, obviously Frenetic Efreet has some pretty good synergy with disc. You know, being able to phase it if you have to pop disc. Frenetic Efreet itself is like an okay, like, you know, it can obviously it depends on how lucky you are, right? How good are you at winning coin flips? Um, so, you know, I mean, Windrake isn't the best clock, but Windrake that makes your opponent waste one or two cards on average to kill it eventually. I mean, maybe that's good enough. I don't know. A lot of weird stuff going on here, but Frenetic Efreet at least kind of makes sense. And of course, you have Manlands, Mistress Factory, Fairy Conclave to beat down, Gitu Encampment. Definitely this person certainly is wanting to keep their mana good. So obviously you have Shivan Reef, but in addition to that you have Undiscovered Paradise and Gemstone Mine, right, in addition for more mana fixing, so that's certainly a good thing. I like that. Um, yeah, a lot of good stuff here. A lot of good stuff here. Like it quite a bit. Notably, AK without intuition is again sometimes the thing. I'm not a huge fan of it, but it is, you know, something that people have done before, and I guess it's okay. Like the first AK just cycles for 2 mana, which is again not great, but the second one, 2 mana draw 2, is very good, and then it only gets really good from there. So yeah, there you go. Definitely an interesting deck. A lot of different stuff going on here, but definitely sort of a typical, like a lot of stuff you'll see in like the counter burn kind of stuff, and then also like this weird like almost Splinter Twin-esque combo in some respects. One's a 3 mana permanent and then a 4 mana permanent that you play to win the game. They're both enchantments that revolve around creatures, so maybe the Splinter Twin comparison is very close. But yeah, anyways, this is pretty interesting stuff. Not a big fan of 61 cards, but you know, you can fit in stuff like Capsize or Earthquake or something, I guess, which is important. at least fun cards. So anyways, let's move on. Okay, yeah, this is just the same part of Phallus that Rich was playing a while ago, and or that he pioneered, basically adding in the Oath stuff, or maybe it was actually a K run that did the Oath thing. Oh, I can't remember. Shoot. Well, anyways, um, yeah. So there you go. This is pretty similar to the list he ran previously at the championship, I think. I don't think there's really anything different. I don't. Maybe there wasn't an Argivian Find main deck, something like that. Anyways, pretty much typical parfait list with the Oath, and of course the really sweet Zer's Weirding tech we talked about last time. Definitely very sweet. All right, now we got something pretty wonky in a way, right? You have mono white control, which is pretty unusual, but not totally weird. Around this time, there were mono white control decks, I think, either in standard and or block during Onslaught. Onslaught had a lot of really powerful white cards, or at least, powerful at that time in standard and block. Think of like Eternal Dragon or like Dawn Elemental and all sorts of other wonky stuff. Again, Chroma is a good card to ramp into, obviously Exalted Angel. So a lot of cool stuff there. And so, I mean, the mana base is basically just plains and ramp cards. Ancient Tune ramps, Remote Farm is the white depletion land where you tap it for 2 white, but you have to put a counter on it or remove a counter from it. You can only use it twice, basically, City of Traders, that kind of thing. So just all ramp all the time. Tooth of Ramos, of course, that's a weird one. It's a cycle of artifacts from masks that 3 to tap for 1 mana, and then of course you can sacrifice it to get another mana if you want to, so you can produce 2 once. So that's kind of cool. And of course Lotus Petal, I guess. This person really wanted to ramp, so yeah, Lotus Petal is certainly unusual, but it does speed you up. Seal Cleansing, right? Main deck disenchants are very good in this format. Decree, Wog, Armageddon, again, that's not that weird. I mean, obviously, getting like an Acroma or a Big Fatty in play with a Mother of Runes and then just casting Armageddon is a good way to win. And of course, you can hold lands back and also have Tooth of Ramos to play spells too. Disenchant Swords, yep, that kind of stuff. All the creatures, again, like Mother of Runes is great for protecting your fatties. Exalted Angel is just a great standalone white threat. Very good card to play in your sort of Durley control deck because you can like use it to gain back the life that you lost while you're setting up. Mastercore is great against weenie decks. Sarah Angel is actually like it's kind of interesting because it has vigilance. It's actually quite good at holding the ground, so you can play it, attack and block. If you block, they'll probably spend a burn spell on it or something or whatever. It's not the most exciting, but maybe this is just like the kind of deck where it's like I actually want Sarah Angel, so that's that seems reasonable, I think. And of course a 1 of Acroma, so very sweet there. The sideboard is where you see a lot of exciting stuff. Paladin and Beck, of course, against red and black decks, clearly. We got Reprisal as a way to kill stuff, of course. It's 4 greater power, so that's pretty cool. And of course, Radiance Dragoons against red decks, or maybe just weenie decks in general. Being a 4 mana 2/5 blocks and kills basically all of their creatures. Gaining 5 life is good, so and especially like it's probably worth it to pay the echo on this just because it's such a huge like a 2/5 is very difficult to kill for them, at least having to burn another card on it, and they can't smother it and that kind of thing. So yeah, definitely pretty interesting card there, but yeah, the rest of the sideboard pretty typical stuff. Interesting deck, definitely pretty interesting cool thing. All right, and now we instead of like a completely new deck, we just have a deck where you have a little bit of iteration. That's right, just a little bit of iteration. Of course, that would be Elephant Guide. This card is super sweet. Definitely a big fan of it in this deck. I've always thought of like trying to go a little bit bigger with this deck. You know, obviously Llanowar Elves helps you do that too. So getting up to 3 mana to, you know, cast something like Call of the Herd is something I considered, but also Elephant Guide. Again, Elephant Guide is hard to, it's a little difficult to get into play, right? Just because like you set yourself up to be 2 for 1 and stuff like that, and that's pretty crappy. But if you do get it going, like when your opponent's tapped out or something, it's very powerful, obviously, right? It busts your dude, and that means they have to deal with it, but if they deal with it like, you know, having to kill it or burn it or whatever, it gives you a free token, which is very strong. So Elephant Guide is a very sweet, very powerful card here, and it does give this deck a little bit more staying power, makes it a little bit beefier, right? Makes your weenie dudes a little bit, gives them a little bit more punch. So yeah, big fan of that. Honestly, I'm not a huge fan of like Bounty of the Hunt. Like sometimes it's obviously like you'll get these really awesome blowouts, but then other times it's not that great. I don't know. I think the card's okay. Honestly, like the Stomp the archetype, I feel like I just need less pump spells. It just feels like just like getting blown out all the time. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. I think Elephant Guide is a very sweet addition to the deck, and I think is pretty strong, pretty strong. All right, so now we just have Enchantress, and the only, well, okay, this is not too weird, right? You have obviously the Oath stuff, right? So you can, you know, Oath well, in the sideboard, you know, Oath into Phantom Neshoba, which is again pretty strong, very good against a lot of different decks, a lot of different aggressive decks, right? Very easy way to win. Just get a big old Neshoba in play. And I guess even just hitting like an Argothian Enchantress and putting that into play is pretty strong too, because obviously the whole deck is built around Argothian Enchantress or Enchantress's presence, that kind of thing. And of course we have the Opalescence, Parallax Wave stuff, which is pretty cool. Yeah, nothing else too weird here. Typically 2 replenish. Nah, yeah, I guess. 1 replenish is more stock, but 2 replenish is okay. I don't mind that. Sideboard is pretty normal, although Words of Worship, I guess, is a little unusual. But hey, you know, I guess you really want to gain life. But yeah, this is nothing too weird, although the Oath tech is pretty interesting. So yeah, there you go. All right, and now we have Elves, and this is just Elves, and it's basically the same as the last list we looked at, although this one has no Tribal Force Mage. Nope. And 4 Tangle Wire. Always, like I said, big fan of 4 Tangle Wire. Yeah, there you go. You can't lose. You can't lose if you have 4 Tangle Wire. Basically, it's impossible. All right, and now, of course, we have a version of the Pit Rack deck, but this time instead of like Plague Spitter or Skittering Scourge, we have some of the Dathi Horror and Dathi Slayer, right? These guys, the shadow dudes. So a little bit more, what's the word? They stack better, obviously. Like Skittering Scourge can make like your draws awkward, obviously. And then of course Nantuko Shade, very good card late game, letting you turn all your extra mana and dark rituals into giant growths, putting them on a pretty quick clock. So that's an interesting change. Yeah, nothing too weird here. Bottomless Pit, Stress, Chain of Smog, Funeral Charm, Scrolls, Racks, all that typical stuff. So yeah, there you go. And of course the deck that won is the Rock, with some pretty interesting tech. Of course, main deck Braids is certainly unusual, but it's definitely very good if you can. Obviously, you have a bunch of things that have variable amount of value, so things like Wall of Roots, Wall of Blossoms are good things to sack. You know, extra lands, that kind of thing. So Braids can give you this sort of land destruction, like resource denial, attrition kind of angle, and it can do it in a very powerful way. You know, where you can already kill like all the all permanent types like enchantments and artifacts and creatures, and you have discard. So being able to hit their other resolve permanents or things like that is pretty sweet. Obviously, it's very good with Braids is very good with Deranged Hermit, as well as just being good with like Recurring Nightmare and stuff like that too. So yeah, pretty sweet. Obviously, Naturalized Smother Edicts, nothing too weird there. Diabolic Intent, this is more unusual, but very good card as a one-of. Just lets you, again, have better access to your sideboard cards. Sacking a creature isn't that big of a deal. Yeah. Also worth noting that this deck does not have any Birds of Paradise. No Birds of Paradise in it. So that's pretty interesting. Obviously, Birds is not very good with Plague Spitter, and Wall of Blossoms and things like that, Wall of Roots, are more durable. They don't, really die to burn, and of course they're better versus aggressive decks in general, and still, of course, sack to Cabal Therapy, and Braids too, all the same. Definitely pretty interesting stuff there. Dust Bowl and Mistress Factories as utility lands, which are sometimes seen. And yeah. Oh, and the Vadi Ildal. I guess that card is pretty strange. Not really sure what that's for, but hey, I guess this kills a thing, sort of. But all in all, a pretty sweet, interesting list. But yeah, that's it. That's all she wrote. There's not much else going on here. A lot of stuff that was pretty stuff we've seen before, but also a lot of really interesting tech. Some new decks, which is really cool. So yeah, really interesting stuff. Big fan. So thanks for stopping by, guys. I hope you enjoyed this. Hope you got something out of this, seeing all these cool friggin' pre-modern decks. So thanks for stopping by, and have a nice day.